Hey everybody, welcome to another video. We're going to continue doing this kind of celebrating the 40-year anniversary of things that I liked, or pop culture just in general, of 1984. So today we're going to do movies, which will be a fun one. I think I went over, of course, I've gone over toys or action figures. I've gone over I haven't really done comics per se, but I did touch on some of the 1984 comics. I could probably do a video unto itself of those. And also, I did the Saturday morning cartoons, which, by the way, I ordered on Amazon. I found it. It's finally available is the Mighty Orbots on DVD. And so hopefully I get to see a good version of it. And ironically, of course, this person probably has those because they've uploaded onto YouTube. So you can go on YouTube, look up Mighty Orbots, and somebody's posted all the episodes finally in decent copy. So even though I've got them it's like $15 or something like that for the box set, the complete set, little set of DVDs. But I ended up watching the first episode last night of the on YouTube to see a decent copy, and for once, finally, get to see a decent copy of those cartoons, and they look amazing. They're silly, but I mean, I liked them then. To me, I think of 1984. Even though the Transformers were cool, and stuff like Dragon's Lair, which I also watched the first episode of that. That was not as good as I remembered it being. It's okay, but it was very Hanna-Barbera-y. Mighty Orbots is just awesome animation, just insane good. It's like night and day as far as the comparison between that quality of that animation. Now that was also animated by a Japanese studio, so I remember what I was saying. So anyways, go check that out. It's pretty cool. Let's get into movies here. I was going to watch an 84 movie last night, but I ended up watching The Octagon with Chuck, more Chuck for the buck, Chuck Norris, which was like the first movie that, if you go back and watch my ninja video, which nobody seemed to watch my ninja video, that was like the movie that really started the ninja craze, I think, was The Octagon with Chuck Norris. It held up today. It's pretty good. I'm just surprised at what a rug he had on his back. Seeing him waller around in bed with some lady with all that hair on his back, it's just like a little, as a little unsettling. But I guess that was back in the day when you could have a rug on your back and a chick still digged you. So, anyways, let's go to movies here. And I looked up. I went to IMDb, and IMDb has a top movies of 1984. Now I'm assuming the criteria of this is when people rate these on IMDb as far as stars. Getting 1 out of 5 stars. I think that's how the rating is on IMDb. So that's basically what they're going on. Is the top 50 1984 movies that fall into that category that have the highest ratings, and that's kind of how they made their list. I agree, but the thing is, for the most part, I agree with this. There's a couple of more obscure movies on here that I could see not making the top 50. So yeah, there's nothing egregious on here like, oh my god, I can't believe that's not on there. I mean, that I can think of. Maybe I'll think of it later. But as of now, I think most of the movies that are on here are pretty accurate as far as they're not in any particular order. They're sort of by popularity, I guess. I listed the order. I guess I can do it again here, listing it by popularity. But it seems that if you were to look at the IMDb rating, we'll go by that. Oh boy, now it's going to put some weird stuff all first. I guess, yeah, we'll go by the IMDb rating, although it's weird because I'm just looking at the numbers here. Yeah, I guess they're in order. So we'll go by IMDb rating. How about that? It said by popularity, but I mean, I guess that's the same thing. I don't know. So we'll go with that criteria. I'm going to switch over to the IMDb here. So let's look at this list. And again, I'm going to tell you my opinions on the movies, whether or not I saw the movie or not, which I think I saw at least about, I would say 90% of these movies I've seen, I believe, 80 to 90%. and I saw most of them, if not almost all of them, in the theater. And I'll tell you which ones I saw in the theater, which ones I saw in cable, because this was the year the first full year we had cable. So by the time some of these hit cable, by late '84, maybe even into '85, I saw them eventually. But I'll go through the ones I saw in the theater, and I'll give some little stories and stuff on what I can remember seeing this stuff in the theater. And this first one, Balkan Spy, I know the Balkan War thing was a big thing about that time. I think, or it was previous to that. I know it was very 80s, the Balkan War thing, but I didn't see this movie. It doesn't look like a movie that it would appeal to me, but it's got the highest ratings at 8.8. I guess this is out of 10. So I would say, okay. I did see Stop Making Sense. I didn't see it in the theater. I saw it on cable, and I don't think I saw it in '84. I think I saw it a little bit after the fact. I didn't really understand the whole Talking Heads John Byrne thing back then in the '80s. Once I got into like prog rock and all of that stuff, I kind of understood, like King Crimson, and understood like Adrian Belew, and understood like the whole, what the Talking Heads were about. But in '84, when I was 10 and 11, I really didn't get it then. It just looked stupid to me. Like, okay, this guy's got a giant suit. It's stupid, right? It's like I wanted to see, I wanted to see people singing about Flight of the Icarus, and I wanted to see some Van Halen. I wanted to see some rock and stuff. I didn't want to watch this weird quasi-autistic dude, which we didn't know what even autism was back then, acting crazy in this big suit. So I didn't get it. I was too young to understand that. I appreciate it now, more, now that I've learned about the Talking Heads, but I didn't understand it then. Actually, who I really learned about the Talking Heads from was reading Cerebus comics, believe it or not. With what's his face, Dave Sim talking about Talking Heads all the time. So, whatever this is, I don't know what this is either. It's probably some other Academy Award-winning, the elusive summer of '68. I don't know. It doesn't. For a young man who lives in Serbian province town, the maturing coincidences or turbulent political events of is it rated R? If it's rated R and if it's a romance and rated R, there's probably some TNA in it. That's about the only thing worth watching it. Other than that, Amadeus is another movie I didn't get. I know who Mozart was because we kind of studied him in elementary school and music class. But sitting to watch a whole movie on Mozart, no matter how good it was, I just thought the poster looked cool. I was just like, oh, that's a cool looking poster. I didn't know what it was. And what is this Amadeus? And then the song Rock Me Amadeus was out. And again, a movie I didn't appreciate until I was much older. I didn't get it back then. So I did see it on cable like in the late 80s, and I still didn't get it really until it took me, into the 90s when I was in my 20s for me to, to finally get it. This Once Upon a Time in America was a crime drama. I really wasn't into crime drama. This is my take on, and obviously you can tell by now, I don't like dramas per se. It's not that I don't like dramatic things. I can't watch drama movies that much. And I really can't watch, and then crime, I don't mind crime, police detective stuff somewhat. I'm not a big fan of crime dramas. Like, I don't care about, cop dramas and all that stuff. These are the three things that I do not give a rat's ass about when it comes to movies. And it seems like this is something a lot of people, not pointing any fingers, who really like this type of movie. And I can tell you, I just don't care. I don't like cop dramas. I don't like legal dramas, and I don't like medical dramas. I don't care for medical, legal, crime, or cop, right? Those things just don't interest me. I don't mind, like, we get the Beverly Hills Cop. I like that because it's a cop action comedy, and then Police Academy as well. It's more poking fun at the cops than it is, a serious, cop drama. But the three things that seem to be so popular on TV, whether it's ER or Hill Street Blues, LA, whatever it is, LA Law, all these, like, I don't understand why, like, simple things. This is like why none of the like the those forensic shows and stuff is. It's like basic science, like relatively basic science or basic whatever things that I think people like to watch those shows to either they're obsessed with medical shit or they like to watch it to make them feel smarter. Um, because it just seems like basic science stuff. I don't know. It just seems like people are fascinated by like the most basic mundane things. It's like legal. It's like not every courtroom drama is Glenn Ross. What's that famous legal movie? I can't remember what it's called. But everybody thinks it's like this. It's so interesting. It's not. I kind of enjoyed the Dahmer TV shows on Netflix. I don't really care for like serial killer stuff either. None of that's fascinating to me. Call me a 50-year-old, 12-year-old, but I want action, fantasy, science fiction, and horror. I can go either way in horror. Horror's not a huge. I'm not a huge fan of horror, but I go either way. I like comedies if it's funny comedy, like. We'll get to it here. You can see it there on the list. Spinal Tap. Frickin' hilarious. One of my favorite movies of all time. Ghostbusters. I mean, Spinal Tap and Ghostbusters are two of my most quotable movies of all time. They came out the same year. And oddly enough, they're right next to each other. So, we'll get to that. The Times of Harvey Milk, again, I don't care about that shit. And I don't care. It's not like I'm anti-gay or anything. I am a little anti-San Francisco just because California just in general just pisses me off. But San Francisco, I think, is probably the most egregious of the California stuff that pisses me off. I don't know. I have an overall general annoyance with California and San Francisco specifically. Which is ironic because all the movies and TV shows all come from California. The Terminator. I mean, that's case in point. That's probably one of my favorite movies of 1984. And I did see this in the theater. Again, the movies I've mentioned, all these so far, I have not seen any of these in the theater. It's the first movie of the list here that I saw in the theater. And I saw it at, I want to say the Hampton movie theater where I used to work at one time when I was older. I saw it at the Hampton. I think I saw it with my dad. I'm pretty sure. I don't think my sister and me saw it. I think it was my dad and I saw that. I thought it was really cool, but I didn't get it was going to be like this big thing, like this big. I barely knew who Arnold Schwarzenegger was at the time. I mean, the only thing else he was in was Conan, which I saw previous to and you could have told me that Terminator and Conan was played by the same person to an 11-year-old or whatever, 10-year-old me back in 1984, and I go, okay. I didn't know. I didn't understand Arnold Schwarzenegger until more like the late 80s as it went on with like Running Man and Total Recall and all those movies. Like late 80s is when I understood. Commando is when I started to understand the Arnold Schwarzenegger thing. But back when it came out, I didn't know. That's another quotable movie too. Obviously, the "I'll be back" thing's quotable. But I always just love the one line in the movie, the Uzi 9mm, what is it, the plasma rifle with the 40 watts range. Just what you see, pal. I love that line. It's just funny. I always crack up whenever I hear that line. It's just what you see, pal. I don't know why that scene's so funny, but it's funny to me. And the one thing about this movie to this day, I was talking about my son with this, is there's three things that I wanted back when this movie came out, when I saw this movie. I wanted camouflage pants, or just green GI, like GI pants, I guess is everybody called them GI pants, just like BDU pants, like the all green ones, not camouflage. I wanted those Nikes that Reese, Michael Bain, he goes into the store and he puts his foot up to the shoe. It's the right size. Puts them on. Those Nikes. Oh, I wanted those Nikes so bad. I never got those Nikes. Did I ever get them? No, I never got them. I always wanted the Nikes that were in that movie. Benjamin Orr also wore those same Nikes at one of the live shows. Those live big festival shows. It's like, oh, he's got the Nikes on. And I wanted a trench coat. I wanted a trench coat. This is way before, like, the Columbine thing, right? I wanted a trench coat. I wanted I did want a laser sight. Laser sight on a pistol was also, like, the coolest thing in the world. I wanted a BB gun with a laser sight. But no, I wanted those Nikes, and I did eventually get, like, camouflage pants, and I remember wearing camouflage pants with camouflage Chuck Taylors, also to coincide with my parachute pants and my Michael Jackson's Thriller and Beat It jacket. It was 1984. Yeah, so obviously Terminator was a big, and I've seen that movie. Terminator 1, I've probably seen it 1,000 times, and here's the thing. This is going to piss people off who really love Terminator. I actually was on just for a sec. I just watched a few minutes of it. I was checking out Samsung TV to see how it worked, and it was either MacGyver or Terminator 2, and I was like, okay. I didn't like Terminator 2. It just didn't have whatever the first movie had. It didn't have that. It didn't, just like a lot of movies at that time. It just had that feel to them. Like the first Highlander has that feel, like the first Terminator. It's just more like gritty. You don't really know where it's going. There's like, they speak of the whole, the Cyberdyne thing, and they have a couple of those scenes in the movies, which is like, what is that? Right? It's like, those were amazing scenes, but in the back of my mind, it's like, I don't really need that to be explained. I just want to see those scenes and just make up my own story in my head, what I think that's all about. And then, I don't want to know who the young, whatever his name is, the Connor kid. I didn't want to know that. I'm not saying that Terminator 2 is a bad movie. It looked great, and I thought it was cool, Linda Hamilton being all badass and stuff in it, but really, at the end of the day, I don't like it, and I didn't like Terminator 3, and I haven't liked Terminator since then. It's the only one I've liked is Terminator 1. It's like Highlander. It's the only one I like is Highlander 1. Paris, Texas, not a clue. Maybe it was on cable. I don't even know what this movie was. The Honest One, it looks like a movie from the 70s, but I don't know what this is either. Obviously, they're popular movies, but I couldn't tell you. Nausicaa, in 1984, I didn't know what it was, and I don't think anybody really knew what it was in 1984. I mean, Robotech hasn't even hit. I mean, not a lot of people were really into anime and stuff from Japan, or outside of what we got over here, whether it was like Voltron started this year. It was the first time we got Voltron, and this is pre-Robotech. So unless you were in the know somehow, most people didn't even know that, like, Battle of the Planets was in Japan. I kind of knew, but there was nothing really from Japan that was big by 84. Now you got to remember, people might say, like, oh no, what are you talking about? People know this. Not in 1984. Like I said, 1984 is when we got Voltron. That was the first thing we're like, I think this is a show in Japan. And then, and obviously Robotech. Oh, this is definitely a show from Japan. And this is when they start bringing, and Transformers started bringing all the Transformers stuff over. Up until this point, even though this is a Miyazaki, nobody knew who, at least I could say, nobody knew who Miyazaki was back then. He didn't really I don't even say Miyazaki really got popular until, like, the late 2000s, or sorry, late 90s into the 2000s. Because even, like, the earlier stuff, even after this, like Totoro and Kiki's Delivery Service, there's a few, like, diehard anime fans knew who that was, but the masses didn't know what that was. So this obviously has gotten its popularity because people they're so gaga over Miyazaki, and they've gone back and watched this. I discovered Nausicaa because of the comic. The manga came over, got translated, I think, by Dark Horse Comics in the late 80s. Then that's when I didn't know what it was until then. So, and I didn't even see the Nausicaa movie till like 93. So, from anime people that were real big into anime. And even when I was going to that was still, Tora Tuesday was late 90, or late 80s, 89, 88, 89. So that's when that's when I saw the what do you call it? I don't think we watched Nausicaa. Maybe we did at Tora Tuesday, but I don't know if we did or not. All right, here comes one of the greats. This is Spinal Tap. One of my all-time favorite movies of all time. One of the most quotable movies of all time. One of the funniest movies of all time, in my opinion. I know it's subjective. But I love this movie. And the thing is, I didn't see it in the theater. I didn't even know what it was until cable, late 80s cable. Like I said, a lot of this stuff that kind of flew by the radar, because we literally just got cable in the end of 83. So we just got it. We had Showtime, HBO, and Cinemax. And I really didn't start my foray into just diehard cable watching and diehard VHS watching, because we didn't get our first VCR until end of 84 into 85. So 84, I guess. Yeah, end of 84 into 85 is when we got our first VCR. So this was before, if you want to take the whole year of 84, I didn't really get into watching the, renting the videos and stuff until, I would say, 85, early 85. Going to Rochester Home Video and Now Playing. So, I didn't know what it was yet. And even, it could have been they could have had the box at the video store, and I probably just glossed right over it, didn't even know what it was. So I didn't discover Spinal Tap until the late 80s in high school. Somebody's like, hey, have you ever seen Spinal Tap? And I'm like, why does everybody keep talking about it? I don't know what that is. And they're like, yeah, it's a movie. It's hilarious. It's like a fake documentary about a rock band, from a rock band. And then I saw it. I thought it was the funniest thing I ever saw. Like, this is hilarious. So it's become one of my favorites. So that's my story with Spinal Tap. Right next to it, also one of my favorite movies of all time, is Ghostbusters. Specifically the first one. I mean, I like the second one. I thought the second one was fun with Vigo. It's Vigo. So anyways, I can't stop saying that. You hound, you animal. It's always the quiet ones. So anyways, the first movie, though, I did see it in the theater. I saw it at the Hampton. I think I saw it with a neighbor. My dad dropped me and my dad didn't watch this one with me. He was done watching movies with me. Well, kind of, sort of. He watched Terminator with me, but he was kind of like, some of the movies, he was like, I can't watch these movies with you. And I'll get to the one that kind of pissed him off the most. I think I told you the story before, but I'll tell you again when we get to it. I can see it there on the list. Sorry. But Ghostbusters, I mean, it's a video all into itself, just like Flash Gordon was. But I loved this movie. Still love this movie. All time. I mean, it's Ghostbusters. Come on. I mean, there's not really much to say about it. My only story is I saw it in the theater, saw it at the Hampton. Instantly, and the whole. I think the thing that really captivated me was the whole, like, the music. I loved that. And it just made me, and that's the whole thing about the Evo Shandor, and all that stuff. Tobin's Spirit Guide, all that just weirdness to it I really liked. I just tuned real in on, like, that kind of weird esoteric stuff was in it. None of that stuff was really in, like the one with the girls or the female comedians. I didn't hate that movie, but it definitely was not good. And like, none of the magic and charm that these guys had, that Bill Murray's delivery on everything is so. I mean, Stripes. I mean, come on, it's Stripes and Meatballs. I mean, the guy's in Caddyshack. I mean, the guy's was a comedic. He still is, still alive, I believe. Comedic genius. He kind of only has one shtick. He's kind of like Chevy Chase. I mean, they're kind of cut from the same cloth. They've got like pretty much one character, and that's Chevy Chase, and that's Bill Murray. But I like those characters. And just Bill Murray's delivery stuff, Egon, your muka, just the way he would say things, where do those stairs go? They go up. That's a classic line. What do you do whenever you see a staircase? Where do those stairs go? They go up. Anyways, so getting on to it. So I remember when The Killing Fields came out, and it was always the serious movie. Serious. And I didn't want to hear serious. It's so adult to me back then. I still feel like I'm not old enough to see The Killing Fields. There's a few movies on this list that I don't think I'm old enough to see. Like, I don't think I'm old enough to see a lot of this stuff. Once Upon a Time in America, this stuff. Seriously, what? I'm 50 years old. What other 50-year-old person is like, oh, really, really into the Jewish gangsters of, in Manhattan back during Prohibition era? That's like boomer shit. Boomer shit and my dad's stuff, like Lost Generation. Like, I don't know about you, but, at 50 years old, I don't care about that stuff. Maybe it's just me, but, you know, so a lot of these movies, like I said, they're too adult for me, even at 50. I'm not old enough to see these movies. Um, Killing Fields is one of them. I don't think I've ever actually seen the Killing Fields. All I just remember is the one reporter guy had this like vest on, this like khaki vest, and I remember they used to sell them at Banana Republic when they used to have the Banana Republic catalogs coming around, and of course the stores. And every time I saw somebody with a khaki vest, I was just called it the Killing Fields vest. Oh, look at that! The Banana Republic, they got Killing Field vests. um, Indiana Jones, Temple of Doom. You kind of don't really need to talk too much about that one. However, I did see it. I saw it at the Winchester Theater. I saw it. I believe I saw that by myself as well. Like I said, my dad kind of was just dropping me off to see the movies, and then come back and picking me up. Actually, or that area hang out in the mall. I think he was just going around looking at young girls. he he would he would hang out or whatever, or he'd go run an errand or whatever and drop me off at the mall. So I saw this. I might have saw this with my one friend, so the Return of the Jedi buddy. I may have seen it with him. I'm not sure. I don't think I did. I think I saw this by myself, and going into it, I was a little weary because of Raiders of the Lost Ark and the face melting scene. I was just like, oh no, it's going to get scary, and I was kind of like, even at like whatever 11, 10 or 11 years old, I was still a little like going like, oh, I hope this movie doesn't get scary. And then they showed like the monkey brain scene and everything. It wasn't that it was scary, but it was just disturbing, and it just it kind of put you. It made me anxious. It gave me anxiety. As a kid seeing that. And it's by nothing by today's standards, but just people don't realize was a lot of this. We're not as desensitized. People now are desensitized. Young kids are desensitized stuff with cable and YouTube and the internet and stuff like that. Back then in '84, at 10, 11 years old, you see just scene like the monkey brain scene. That was disturbing, and it made you anxious, made you a little off. Um, but people don't seem to. I don't know. Maybe people my age understand that, but I don't think a lot of young people understand that. Blood Simple, I remember hearing about it, no clue what it is. Looks like a movie that's, the owner of a seedy small town Texas bar discovers one of his employees having an affair with his wife. That's adult stuff. Even like I said, I'm not old enough to see this at 50 years old because I'm not old. I wish I could have had an affair on my wife, but I was never that lucky. So, sexism. Sex Mission. I'd never heard of this. Adventure, comedy, sci-fi. I don't know what this is completely exclusively. Oh, somebody wakes up underground society. I might. I don't know what this is. I've never seen it. Might see this. Okay, here we go. Here's the controversial movie of 1984. This is kind of what the Dark Crystal kind of. My dad was like, he just didn't like Dark Crystal because he thought it was stupid and he couldn't sit through it. And he was like, going, you keep picking these weird movies I'm not going to go see with you. I'll take you to see them, but I'm not going to stick around. I don't want to waste a ticket because I'm not into this. So, but one he wanted to see, and it was rated R, and my dad's like, well, it's rated R, maybe I should sit there with you, watch it. And it's a, cop comedy, right? My dad said, oh, I might be into this. He liked that kind of thing. The very first part of this movie kicks off, right? And it's just F-ity F-F-F, right? My dad had really weird morals back then. Well, I guess most of his life with me. He didn't care if I watched, like, the Playboy channel. He didn't really want me to watch, like, hardcore porn. But, he didn't really care what I watched as far as, like, nudity. Gore, he didn't even, bat an eye at. One thing he did not like me listening to was a lot of swearing. Like, just saying hell around my dad pissed my dad off. He's like, watch your mouth. It's like, all right, it's weird. I mean, and some of the stuff that, my dad was into, that I was exposed to, was just stuff that you don't want to expose a young kid to. But he had this weird morality about swearing. I don't know where it came from. I don't know if his dad was like that or what, but the opening of the movie is, it's just, it's F this, F that, F that. My dad's like, no, we're done. He pulled me out at the very first scene before they even got in the truck and started driving, and I didn't get to see this movie. I ended up going back to see the movie with my mom and my sister, or maybe my sister, but maybe it was just my mom. I saw this movie with my mom like a few weeks later, or I was still in the theater. My mom didn't care. And I watched the whole movie, and I loved the movie, right? The other thing, I think the reason my dad didn't want to watch this movie, too, is because my dad's very racist, or he was. He's dead now, but my dad was very racist, and he really didn't like black people, and he really didn't like Detroit. And he thought the whole movie was going to be in Detroit, even though it says Beverly Hills Cop. But it starts out in Detroit, and it's got a black main character, right? I don't think my dad he didn't want to watch it, right? Because of the way he was. And, I mean, that wasn't unrealistic back then. I mean, not all of them, but a lot of my friends and neighbors, the dads, they're all like in their 40s-ish. They're all vaguely racist, very vaguely sexist. None of them wanted to ever go to Detroit. That's why you never really got to go to see anything in Detroit, like a game, because they never wanted to drive to Detroit. And when they did have to drive to Detroit, they were very, like, on edge the whole time. So that, I think that the reason none of this stuff, none of this stuff even occurred to me as a kid. I'm like thinking, Beverly Hills Scouts got the Eddie Murphy guy, the guy from Saturday Night Live. He's funny, right? Because you're a kid, and you're a kid with, even had a very racist dad. It didn't really, it didn't really make me, I was still pretty naive, and I was still pretty, innocent. So it didn't really, like, I was just like, okay. I was just like, kind of like every time my dad would go off, I'm just like, I would just roll my eyes, right? My dad would go off, trust me. So he pulled me out of Beverly Hills Cop. Once I saw the movie, one of my all-time favorite movies, also very quotable movie with the banana and the tailpipe, the whole 9 yards. Still one of my favorite movies of all time. And then next to that, Nightmare on Elm Street. Now, I did not see Nightmare on Elm Street in the movie theater. I remember when it came out. I remember everybody talking about it. But this is one I ended up definitely seeing on cable. So, at this time, I was still in 5th, 6th grade. So, once I got in 7th grade and 8th grade, that's when I was in junior high, 85, 86. That's when, like, everybody started to talk about horror movies, and it was like a thing. Like, I gotta see this horror movie. I was too scared to see horror movies prior to that. I mean, I had seen a few, but I really didn't see horror movies. So this is like I'm going to watch it on cable, or I'm going to rent it on video, like in 85, 86, 87. Basically that 3-year span. And I'm going to try to not get scared and watch the movie. That was the thing. It was almost like a badge of honor, like a thing. It's like, you know what, I'm going to try to watch all the Friday the 13th movies, and I can tell everybody I watched all the Friday the 13th movies, and I didn't get scared. But the problem is I got freaking terrified. I couldn't sleep at night. I remember my dad yelling at me. We were in the trailer there, and I watched like 3 Friday the 13th movies in a row. I think I watched like 2, 3, and 4. And my dad's like, and I was like, Dad, I can't get to sleep. And he's like, I can't get to sleep. And he's just like, would you just go to sleep? He was yelling at me. I remember I could hear him in the trailers, paper thin. You could hear him in his bedroom going, just go to sleep. And I'm like, but I'm scared. He's like, what are you scared? He's like, I told you not to watch those goddamn movies. I goes, I knew you were going to get scared. And I got scared. That's why, like the first Aliens came out in 86. I was hesitant to go see that. I ended up not seeing it in the movie theater just because I was too scared to see it in the theater. I wanted to wait until it came on cable where I could, kind of watch it from afar. Watch it in videotape where it's like, I could just turn it off if I don't like it. And of course, I ended up watching it, and then I watched, Nightmare on Elm Street after the fact. So that's my experience with Elm Street. For me, also, just like most of these movies, the first one's always my favorite usually. Beverly Hills Cop, first one's favorite. I like the second one, but I like the first one. Well, ironically, we did see the second one in the theater. My sister, my dad, and I. My dad didn't even make a peep the whole time. I don't know. Maybe because they never took place in Detroit. I don't know. There's more white people in it than black. I don't know why my dad didn't make a peep. Maybe my sister got after him about it, and then didn't want to piss off my sister, so he just shut up the whole time. That was weird. But The Natural, I wasn't old enough to see that. I didn't understand. It's not appeal to me. Places in the Heart. This movie here. Sorry, I can't see where I'm pointing, but Places in the Heart. I had a friend who was actually, my mom's had a friend, a woman that they were, my mom and her mom, they'd be going out to the bars all the time. And I would end up going over to his house and staying like half the night. Basically, I'd fall asleep at their house up until my mom and his mom would come home from the bar on like a weekday night too, sometimes a weekend. Come home at like 2 a.m. and they'd wake me up, and then I'd have to go get in a really, really cold old like 1973 Dodge Dart with leather seats and the heat. Car just, it smelled like exhaust, and the car barely. It took a while to get. I don't know why she didn't start the car first, then come wake me up, and then put me in a warm car. But instead, I had to get out. I was sleeping on their couch with a blanket, and I was warm and comfortable and asleep. And then I'd have to get up at like 2 a.m. and go get in the car that's freezing cold, and it wouldn't warm up until we got home, which is like 15 minutes away. Then I'd go head back in, I'd fall asleep, and then I'd be dead tired the next day to go to school. That was just a normal occurrence back then. Like I said, these divorced mothers they were grabbing at any branch they could before they hit the ground to find themselves a dude, especially a dude with some money. So, but the mom, the friend's mom, right? I stayed there like, or she took us, me and the son, because we kind of started to get along, and took us to the Winchester Mall, and she says, we're gonna go see a movie. I want you guys to see this movie with me. Okay. Now, I didn't like the mom. She was very she kind of reminded me of Mrs. Warlock. She had like reddish hair, a little bit younger than Warlock, but she was very she was very like well-to-do and like arrogant, and like seems like her husband must have had money, because she had seemed like she came from money, but and they had a nice house, even for being divorced. And I just didn't like that lady. Just thinking about it, I just did not like that lady. Anyways, but she took us, she goes, I want you to see this movie. Okay, I'll go see a movie. And then she took us to see Places in the Heart with Sally Fields. Why would you take two, 10, 11-year-old boys to go see Places in the Heart? So I saw it. And actually, I didn't mind the movie. I actually watched it, and I didn't really mind the movie. But I didn't. Was this supposed to be like some lesson, some Mrs. Warlock lesson or something? On don't be part of the Ku Klux Klan like your dad. I don't know, something weird. I didn't understand it. But I did see that. I saw that in the theater. Oddly enough, Stranger Than Paradise. I vaguely know what that is. Never saw it. Broadway, none of the Broadway Danny Rose. I'm not watching that. Karate Kid, saw it in the theater. I think we saw, I think I saw this at the Lakeside Mall Theater, which is a weird theater to go to, but I saw this at the Lakeside Mall Theater, the Karate Kid, and it was, 84 was the ninja karate craze, and ninjas, karate, it's all the same thing, right? Kung Fu movies, it's Japanese, Chinese, all the same thing. So anyways, and I liked it, just like most people liked it, and Karate Kid was cool. Again, same thing. I saw the second one in the theater. I gotta say, I still like the first one the best. Gremlins. Now, Gremlins, when I saw when they showed the preview for that, and I saw the trailer for it, I was like, oh, I want to see that. And then they had the toys out before they... And I should have pulled this up in the catalog, because I think they had a listing towards the end. They had the Gremlin, the Stripe figure, big Stripe, life-size Stripe doll with with the real hair and everything, whatever, fake hair, but you know, fuzzy hair on top. I had that. I got that for my birthday in 1984, and I really liked Gremlins. That was like one of my favorite movies. It just, I don't know, I just liked it. It was cartoony enough and kiddie enough, as they used to call it, but at the same time a little disturbing and a little like, you know, weird. Was that Spielberg did that? I can't remember if Spielberg did that, but I don't know. I like the whole mythos, like in the beginning with the guy in the shop, the old Chinese guy in the shop. You know, he's smoking the pipe, and the kids, you know, gonna sell him the mogwai. It was just like the Evo Shandor from Ghostbusters. It was just weird, like kind of backstory that I thought was more interesting than the actual movie itself. It's just like, well, I want to know. I want to know about it, but I don't want to. I don't want to see a movie explaining about it. I want to know about it by exploring my own imagination and my own mind and come up with my own scenario. That's how I wanted to know about it. I wanted to sit there in my bed or on the couch and just think about it and just think my own stories up in my head about it. That's what I was all about. Speaking of imagination, Never Ending Story. Saw it at the Winchester Mall. This was a movie that my dad was definitely not going to watch. Because he even looked at the poster and he goes, yeah, I'm not watching that one. Here's the money. Go get your ticket. Go get your popcorn, your candy, and I'll see you at the end of the movie. I'll be waiting out front for you, or waiting out the back for you. He would just stand out there. And he started to smoke again, too. So he was out there smoking when I came out of the theater, and he's like, "Did you like it?" And I go, "Yeah, it was pretty good." He's like, "All right, let's get in the car." So, can we stop it? Can we go over to Kmart? Can we go over to JK Toys? He's like, I knew he was going to ask that. And I ended up going over to JK Toys and Kmart to go and get action figures. But anyways, but yeah, Never Ending Story. I loved it. Loved it in the theater. Loved the music. And obviously the whole, you know, Stranger Things deal, they kind of did that with the music. But I always loved the music as a kid. It always put me in a really good mood. There's two music scores from movies that always just put me in a really good mood, in a weird kind of, like, it's hard to describe the kind of mindset I was in when I would hear them, but like the Never Ending Story and like the Labyrinth, the David Bowie song from Labyrinth, I don't know, it just kind of put me in this, like, you know, like I said, there's a lot of bad things going on this year, specifically at home and into the next year. And it just took me to like a different place, and I was more fascinated, not necessarily about escaping to some fantasy world with fantasy creatures and stuff. What in my mind, and this kind of permeated a lot of these movies in '84, is I wanted to my fantasy was to have like parents together and live in a nice house again, like we had when my parents were together, not live in like shitty apartments and trailers, and and always be broke, you know what I mean, and have like my own real room that wasn't this tiny little paper thin trailer room, or some the corner of a living room type of thing as my room. I really wanted to have like, and I wanted to be able to interact with other like kids of like, not be like looked down upon as being the divorced kid who's broke. Had broke parents. Although my dad was not broke at the time, but he was into so many other foul things that a lot of my friends' parents didn't want me to go over there anyways, or them to go over in that area anyways, because they all kind of knew. Yeah, that's what I was. That's what, and that music kind of has that. It hits you there, Let's see, Passage to India. I heard about the movie, again, way too adult for me. Even too adult to me at 50 years old. I don't know what this is. Rania the Robber's Daughter. I don't even remember the poster. I don't know what this is. Top Secret. I didn't see it in theater. I saw it on cable very shortly. I probably saw it in '85 on cable. And I thought that is a chocolat mousse. That movie was hilarious too. I know a little German. There he goes. No. I love that movie. Top Secret's a funny. Everybody had a surfboard and a shotgun too. That's a good movie. You got to see Top Secret sometime. Birdie. I remember the Isn't this like an Academy Award winning movie in like 2019? Maybe it was Birdman. I don't know. I never saw it. War drama. I liked war, not drama. If it was war action, sure, but not war drama. 1984. I remember a lot of people talking about this movie and talking about, oh, it's based on a book by James Orwell. It talks about a dystopian future. Well, A, I didn't read. B, I didn't know what the word dystopian meant. When it says 1984, right, it's like, oh, it's about a dystopian society in 1984. I'm like, it is 1984. What do you mean everything's bad? What? Again, 10, 11 years old, didn't get it. Didn't understand the significance of 1984, or that we're living in an Orwellian society today. I did not know that in 1984. So that movie was lost. I remember seeing the movie poster for it and understands, like, what is that? And it was one of those things where it's like I had a vague curiosity just because people would talk about it. You know, adults would talk about it and make you think like, oh, I want to hang out with the adults and talk about this thing that sounds disturbing and weird and I don't know, you know, that whole thing. 16 Candles, didn't see it in the theater, saw it on cable. It was a big movie. That's a Cryer movie. Isn't it a John Cryer movie? It's like Breakfast Club. I didn't see Breakfast Club in the theater. I saw that on cable. It's always movies reminded me of my sister and like older people. So I just didn't really kind of like, I don't know, it didn't really appeal to me. What was it considered? I'm sure comedy something. Comedy, romantic, well, it's a romantic comedy. Well, there you go, rom-com. Nobody said rom-com back in 1984. I don't think I even heard of the word rom-com until like the 2000s, when everything's got to have a name now because of the frickin' internet. But yeah, let me check the time. Ooh, I'm going to have to go through this list quick. I didn't, what do you call it? Romantic comedies back then are just like, You know, The Bounty, I remember seeing a poster for it or a listing in the cable guide for it, never watched it. Starman, I saw it on cable, did not see it in the theater. I liked it. It had Jeff Bridges, Margot Kidder. It was about an alien. It was one of those movies I liked, even though it was technically, it's a romantic sci-fi, but it has sci-fi in it, so you got me, right? If it was romantic comedy, no. But you say romantic sci-fi? Oh, I'm there. Wheels on Meals. I didn't even know who Jackie Chan was in 1984. I didn't see this until we got really into the whole Hong Kong craze, like in the mid to late 90s. Then I watched Wheels on Meals, and I just assumed it was like from the 70s, but I didn't really know. But it was the 80s. Romancing the Stone. Funny story about that kid that my mom, yada. It was kind of weird. My mom went to Africa with a boyfriend, right? He, took her to Africa and Spain. And so I was going to be home alone for a week. And then my dad was also in the hospital at the same time, so I couldn't go to my dad's. My sister, this was in the summer, my sister was home from University of Michigan, and she ended up staying with me the whole week. Well, she says, you want to go see a movie? We ended up going to see Romancing the Stone, and that kid that I was friends with the mom, he was seeing it at the same time. And then I remember wanting to go to his house afterwards, and then that wasn't happening because my sister didn't want me to go over there or whatever. I had a big argument with my sister, and then I remember I think that's when I broke the front glass to the front door because I was pushing on the door. I wanted to go outside in general when I got home. And my grandma came down from down the street, and she was hitting me with a stick, all kinds of craziness. And and then right after, like literally like the next day, next evening, I fell asleep, woke up in the middle of the night with like 104 temperature, screaming stomach ache, throwing up, and I was just sick the entire rest of the week, and until my mom got back. So obviously I think a lot of what was going on too at the time was psychosomatic, probably caused me to be ill. So all of my Romancing the Stone uh, memories all revolve around that week. Um, Repo Man, I remember seeing this all the time in the video store. I didn't know what it was. I didn't even know what a Repo Man was back then. And I remember, I don't even think I ever saw Repo Man, to tell you the truth. Body Double. Now, there's one of those movies that I'm not old enough to see at 50 years old. It's weird. I would say this like, I don't know if I got time to go on this tangent, but like I said, I find today in today's society and the way, especially with dudes, around my ages, nothing feels like the way it did back then. Like adult things were adult, right? Like adult situations, Like when you read that in the cable guide, it's like, oh, it says adult situation. What does that mean? It's like, oh, this guy is, he's obsessed and what does it say? He has an obsession by spying on this beautiful chick, It's just like, and he has to live with the dire consequences. I didn't get that. All I saw was a girl looks half naked behind blinds, and I thought, ooh, something's going on there. This is late night Skinamax stuff. But I didn't get it. And that whole, there's a whole, the 80s, and again, this may be just because I perceived it as a child, and I thought things were different. But when I became an adult, none of the things that, my parents and, other people's parents were into, like bands like Air Supply and going to Chi-Chi's to have margaritas and going over to a friend's house and everybody drinking all the time, it's like, oh, did you care for a drink? Care for a glass of scotch. All that weird adult crap that you'd see adults do back in the 80s. They're all fucking around on each other, all having affairs, they're all doing cocaine, in the next room, all that stuff. As a kid, it's just I perceived adults differently. Now at 50 years old, I still feel like I'm 12, and I still don't feel like an adult. I still don't feel like I'm old enough to live in that world. I'd like to live in that world. Maybe not the drastic consequences, but I'd like to, live in that world. But, our society is different nowadays, and, and being middle-aged in this society is it's annoying, to say the least, because I think that young people right now, with the whole social, unrest and all that stuff, are more annoying than they ever were. Maybe the last time they were this annoying was maybe for, the hippies in the 60s. But, during the 80s, young people really weren't that annoying. At least it didn't seem like they were that annoying. And so maybe it's because it was Reagan, it's the 80s, it's all about greed and money and cocaine and hookers. I don't know. Maybe that's what it was, but nowadays, I just don't, like I said, these movies like this now, watching them as an adult. I was watching The Octagon the other night. It's I don't get that adult world, because I never really lived it. Speaking of adult, Muppet Steak Manhattan. I saw that at Hampton Movie Theater. Saw that in the theater. Outside of just going to see a Muppet movie, I didn't really have a lot to say about it. I enjoyed it. It came out of the theater. I don't think I've ever seen it since that time in 1984, and I saw it at Hampton. Beverly Hills Cop. Did not see it in the movie theater. Saw it on videotape. We rented it in 1985. And then started watching the Beverly Hills Cop movies, and I thought they were funny. I really only liked the first one. The second one was okay because Bobcat, but I didn't watch. After that was done, after Steve Guttenberg left, I was really out. That reminds me of the movie Bad Medicine with Guttenberg. That also came around. That was more 85, 86. 2010. Didn't see it in the theater. Saw it on video. Didn't understand it then. Didn't even see 2001 by this point. So 85, I saw this on video. Just because it's science fiction. Adventure. Mystery. Oh, okay. What's this movie? I kept thinking it was a Star Trek movie back then. Is this a Star Trek movie? And they're like, no, it's a movie about a thing. And then I didn't see 2001 until 1993. And then oh yeah, so 2010 was the sequel to that. I didn't understand it until I was in my 20s. Then I watched them both again. Okay, now I understand it. Again, too cerebral for a kid. Streets of Fire. I remember seeing this poster. I've never seen the movie. At least I don't think I've seen it. It's another one. You know, it's action, crime, drama. It reminds me of like yeah. It's one of those kind. It's a dad movie. Even though now that I'm a dad, I like watching the Mighty Orbots. That's funny. Like my stepdad, right? You know, he can't walk. He sits, you know, there's a whole craziness going on with that. Anyways, but he would sit there, or he'd still sit there, and he just watches Western after Western after Western after Western. And it's just funny. I thought to myself, you know, if I was ever like laid up when I'm old, you know, and I can't walk, and all I'm going to do is sit there and watch television all day, I'm not going to watch Western after Western after Western. I'm going to watch cartoon after cartoon after cartoon after sci-fi, you know, action movies and episodes of you know, that type. You know what I mean? It's like I'm from a different world. I'm from a different era. Last Starfighter, awesome movie. Saw it at the Winchester Mall. Loved it then. Loved it today. If you go check out my video on Last Starfighter, and that's pretty much everything you need to know about that movie. Footloose. My sister took me to see this. I do think it is weird that back in 1984 that you could dance your way through a factory. I never in my life have ever been compelled to dance my way through a factory, but you could dance your way through a factory. Great soundtrack. Good movie. Revenge of the Nerds. Didn't see it in the theater. It was rated R. It's probably one of those movies my dad probably would have let me see. Well, he did let me see it when it came to cable, but it's probably one of those movies he would have let me see, and he probably would have loved to see it because he'd like to see some young college girls, you know, in his 40s. But we just didn't see it in the theater. I saw this on cable. I probably saw this in 85, 86, somewhere around this. Revenge of the Nerds, I mean, it's a classic movie. I like it. But I do agree with, if you ever see the movie American Splendor with Harvey Pecord, and it's funny because, and he's totally right, if you think about this movie nowadays, you might not have thought about it in the 80s this way, but definitely think about it now, is, you know, he takes his friend, there's one friend he works with, is like, this is back before they knew what autism was, and he just thought he was a nerd, right, but he was very autistic. He was an adult. And he says, I would like to go see this movie, but this movie is not playing in our town. This movie is played, you know, 50 miles away, and I do not own a car, do not drive. Can you take me to see this? So Pecord drives his friend that he works with to see this movie, and they go see this movie together. And he comes out of the movie, and Pecord says to the guy, he goes, why'd you like that movie? He's like, I love this movie. I totally relate with this movie. He's like, you do? He's like, yes. He goes, I think that I am a nerd. Everybody considers me a nerd, so I can identify with these nerds. And he's like, no, you can't. He says, all of those guys are rich, and they're all going to get engineering degrees, and they're all going to make a lot of money. He says, you don't make a lot. You're a file clerk in an office. He says, you're not rich or poor. He says, how can you relate with those people? And you know what? It's so weird when he said that. It's just like, it really makes a lot of sense to me. I'm like, well, yeah, it's just like, I think a lot of the nerds back in the day, again, yeah, a lot of them were autistic, right? But people didn't know what that was. They thought they were a spaz or a dork. And a lot of those kids, I've said, I mean, the nerds are going to inherit the earth. Look who all the big money people are nowadays. Bezos, Elon Musk, who's the other alien? The Facebook guy, whatever that guy, Zuckerberg, right? That's the thing, is like, you watch this movie back in the 80s, you're like going, you know, it'd be nice to be the jock to get all the girls and stuff like that, but it's like, I think I'd rather be the nerd who's probably gonna, you know, definitely be, you know, making well over 6 figures, you know, doing, you know, some type of tech degree, you know, whether it's computers or whatever, engineering, right? It's just like, I guess it's Revenge of the Nerd. Well, that is the revenge. The revenge isn't that they got one up on the jocks back in college. The revenge is, yeah, these guys are going to be your boss, right? Or these are going to, they're not even your boss. These are the guys that own the company, run the company. And the jocks are the idiots that they're, you know, basically they're the underlings. So that's, you know, that's my thoughts on Revenge of the Nerds. I'm almost done here. We're just about to hit an hour. I'm almost done. Got a few good ones left to go here. Search for Spock, saw it in the theater, saw all of the Star Trek movies in the theater. Klingon bastards, they murdered my son. I love that line from this movie. Um, it was a weird movie because it was like it's Star Trek, it's science fiction. I didn't really understand. It was so adult for me. Not like Star Wars makes sense, right? Star Wars is pretty simple. Star Wars is, hey, Luke is this kid, Han Solo is this cool guy that he hangs out with. They got a princess. They got a big Wookiee. They go and they, even though some of the stuff in Star Wars is a little heady for a young kid, you got it, right? But Star Trek always seemed like something else is going on there. It's sophisticated storytelling. It's actual science fiction, not science fantasy. And just the fact that they were at their age too when they made these like movies as opposed to doing the TV show, it's just like everything seemed, again, in that whole weird world of the 80s where adults just seemed different than the adults of today, or even the adults of 10 years, 15 years ago. Even when I was in my 30s, I didn't feel like the adults from the 80s. In the 20s, I still felt like kind of just a glorified teenager. But anyways, yeah, these... I like the movie. It's great. I mean, I love all the Star Trek movies. Even the bad ones. I like the bad ones, too. All of Me, that looks like a movie I do not want to see. You know why? It says romantic and comedy. Don't be fooled by fantasy. It is a romantic comedy. It's Steve Martin and, what's her face? Lily Tomlin. yeah, I'm not going to see I don't mind Steve Martin, because he's a wild and crazy guy. I mean, I don't mind Steve Martin in, like, Planes, Trains, and Automobiles, but you throw him together with Lily Tomlin. What was with Lily Tomlin? Did people think she was hot back then? I mean, she's not unattractive. She just looks weird. I don't know. Tell me in the comments, did you think Lily Tomlin was hot in the 80s? As a 50-year-old man now, yeah, I would probably have sex with her. But, I mean, I'm just saying is... 1980s Lily Tomlin. I don't know if she's still alive. She's an old woman now, but back then it's like, yeah, I guess she was attractive. I know there's a lot of women like that from like the 80s where like all these older men's like, oh, that woman, that 32-year-old woman when I'm 42, right? You're like going like, I'm 50 now. I don't think I would, I don't know what guys were seeing in some of these women back then. Dune. Well, you probably heard my Dune spiel, just like Last Starfire. Go watch my Dune video. I'll tell you all my Dune stories. But Dune came out this year. I saw it at the theater. Saw it at... did you see it at Winchester? I can't remember. Hampton? Hampton, I think. Yeah, I think we saw it at the Hampton. I'll talk about toys, all that stuff. Go watch my other videos. It's my segue into watching my other videos. Go watch my other videos. I'll tell you my whole Dune experience. But Dune came out that year. Also a very quotable movie. Also one of my favorite movies of all time. It's funny how for the ratings, it's way down the list here. Red Dawn. There's another movie. I don't think I made a video on this one before, but Red Dawn was one of those movies that really kind of spoke to the early 80s Reagan, Cold War, kill a commie for mommy, that type of thing where it's like, they really wanted to make you go to the Army Navy surplus stores and load up on military surplus and go hide out in the mountains and wait for the commies to come and try to attack, and then just, like I said, I used to wear those t-shirts. I told this in the video before. I used to wear those t-shirts I got at the Army Navy surplus store. My dad didn't think of anything of it. He bought me these t-shirts. Kill a commie for mommy. What was it? I can't remember. I had all these very anti-communist t-shirts. Where they're pretty derogatory. For a kid to be wearing to elementary school, and I had got sent home a few times wearing the shirts, and they told me I couldn't wear these shirts anymore when I came back to school. But I thought it was funny too. It was like, I like being a dick going to school, and I like being a dick to the communists. They're a bunch of enemies. Wolverines. That type of thing. I thought that was funny back then. Nowadays, I just find it comical. Splash. Oh, there's a scene with Daryl Hannah in that movie. Woo! Right in the beginning of the movie that's burned into my brain. But anyways, I saw this in the theater. I saw it at the Hampton. This was another movie that my dad didn't want to watch because he thought it looked stupid. So just dropped me off, and I saw Splash in the theater. It's a good movie. I haven't seen it in a long time. Just that one scene with her getting out of the water at the Statue of Liberty, that one scene is burned into my brain. Bachelor Party. I didn't see it, obviously, in the theater, but this was one of those movies you saw on cable. I remember videotaping this on VHS and watching this. I just loved this movie for some reason. I don't know why. It was all the TNA that's in it. The belly dancer at the end of the movie. Oh, I feel like the guy just bites the whatever he is. I had the same reaction when I saw that scene. I was like, oh my lordy. But I don't know if it was Tom Hanks. This is, Tom Hanks when he was still bosom buddies-esque Tom Hanks. This is before the Burbs even. But I don't know. There's a lot of funny scenes in this movie that are just hilarious, I find. Nick the Dick. Was Nick the Dick? Yeah, Nick the Dick's in it. Yeah. Nick the Dick. So I guess we're at the end of the list of the 50. One of the movies I wanted to comment on was Ice Pirates. That was another movie that was like funny, hilarious, funny, and science fiction and quasi, all that stuff back then. I want to see. I haven't seen Ice Pirates with space herpes. I haven't seen that in a very long time, but I remember really enjoying Ice Pirates. Another honorable mention, it didn't make it to this list, was Adventures of Buckaroo Banzai. That was another movie that I watched as a kid on cable. I didn't see it in the theater, and I didn't get it. I didn't understand why it's funny. With Ed Begley Jr. and Jeff Goldblum, and I just didn't understand why that movie was... It was one of those weird movies. It's like, who is this for? Because, like my dad, like adults, they're like, I'm not going to see this stupid movie, right? And at the same time, like kids are like, when it's got kids stuff in that kids might like, but it's not a kids movie. I guess it's for like college age kids that are like college nerds, I guess like sci-fi nerds and stuff, or college people who, were young adults. I guess that's who the movie was for. It's like, again, Buckaroo Banzai was one of those ones. I get it now, but I didn't get it then. So, that's, according to IMDb, these are the top 50 movies of 1984. A lot of classics this year. It's funny how there's a lot of classic cartoons, Transformers, that type of thing. There's also a lot of classic movies, 84, albums, huge year for albums. I'm going to do that. That's going to be my next list. It's going to be my next video is going to be doing on the albums. Albums of 84, huge year for albums. It's just funny how that specific year, 83 to me is more of a memorable year because I had more fun, especially the summer of 83. But it dovetails right into 84, and by 84 I was a little older, and again, just so many memorable things, in one year. It's weird. I don't know any other years. Maybe 87 was a big year for me. Into the 90s. Like I said, I really hate the 90s. I really hated my 20s. And like I said, working midnights for almost 5 years out of the 90s. I pretty much slept through the 90s. It's I would say there's not as many years in recent history in the last few decades that are as memorable to me and have as many just memorable things that to this day I still truly cherish, all came out of 1984. I guess if I'm living in the past, I guess 83, 84, 85, right around that time period, that mid-80s. And like I said, I've got a lot of fondness for the late 80s too, mid to late 80s too, so I guess all of the 80s. That's why I make these videos talking about a lot of this stuff. So, that said, I'll let you guys go because it is over an hour here. So, next one video I'm going to do is definitely going to be the albums of 84, and then I'll have to think about what other things if I'm going to revisit the other, anniversaries, now that it's 2024, 40-year anniversary of this stuff, and talk about it. But, okay, remember, like and subscribe, do all that business. I'll let you go here, and I will catch you on the next one. Take care. Bye-bye.